shelves and the head, just anything that was in my mother's kitchen, because that's where I built it. And anyway, then we gathered up a bunch of zombies, which were hippies, basically, kind of lounging in, is that
Coconut Grove.
Coconut Grove, yeah. And they were just out in the park, and it was kind of like, hey, you guys want to be in a movie? And oh yeah, sure, you know. So we gathered up these people and took them to an island where they couldn't escape, and made them up, you know. And it was pretty funny actually, because at some point they rebelled against the conditions. Do you remember this? And they were like demonstrating. You know, they weren't going to work because they were getting day-old meatball sandwiches from this place called the Mad Italian, I remember. And they were stuck on this island. Now they were pissed because they had to wait for hours in this makeup, and they couldn't take it off. And I remember at one point, Bob, and there was a pier that went out into the water, kind of a long pier, and it was sort of shaky. And there were sharks swimming around in the water. So Bob, or the cameraman, I think the DP, wanted to check something, and he walked out to the end of this dock. And every step, the dock kind of swayed, you know. And then he said, Bob, come take a look at this. So then Bob came out, and these guys were both sort of heavy set. So then Bob comes out, and the thing is rocking, you know. And then Bob signaled, I think, to Gary. So Gary was about 5 feet tall and about 300 pounds. And so he starts out, and he gets about halfway out, and I remember Bob said, no, Gary, don't. And the whole thing collapsed. They went into the water, and these sharks are swimming around, you know. So anyway, we fished them out, and we shot all this stuff on the island. They built a cemetery there, I think a pretty good one. And we shot a lot of stuff there. I think did the shoot the scene with the zombies coming out, was that on the island, or was that in the...
I think it was both, in front of the house
Oh,
and
okay.
on the island.
But when they came out of the ground.
I think that was the island.
Okay, yeah. But then we shot other stuff in the nursery. What the
Matheson Hammock?
It was the county nursery where they grew the plants for the county for the roads and things. But they're full of mosquitoes. Both places were totally infested with mosquitoes.
Is what?
Both of the locations were totally infested with mosquitoes.
Yes, they were.
I used to get into the coffin and just close the lid because it was the only way I could escape from the mosquitoes. And then the coffin was in the grave, so some wise guy started to shovel some dirt on top of the coffin, and you know, I finally realized what was going on. I was pissed. I flipped open that coffin, and I roared out of this grave, and they knew it was me, but they were scared shitless.
So, I have a question. I don't know if it's a question, but so there are quite a few films from that time period that, you know, films made during that time period. Well, not quite a few, but some that are so creepy. You know, even back then they were creepy. I mean, does anybody disagree this movie was not creepy? And even today, it's like what all the films that have been made, and all the advances in technology and stuff, and all the attempts to make movies like that, and it still doesn't succeed. This movie just still is creepy. And Art, would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And so I guess it's a general throw out at somebody here question. Why do you think it just came out that way? I know you had a script and a plan to make a film about this subject matter, but it just came out so unusual for the budget and everything. It just worked that this is a creepy film even today.
One of the things was, a lot of things were understated. The makeup was excellent, the special effects were excellent, the music was excellent, the script was absolutely horrible. But it was kind of understated. But they did some things that had never been done before. For example, when the zombies were eating the people, they actually got liver and things like that they were eating raw liver, so it was real looking. And when I attacked Alan, of course, there was no blood, there was no anything. It was just kind of understated, but it was the ultimate revenge.
Well, we hear so much about Vietnam era horror movies, and so many of them had such a dark, serious tone. And then here you have this movie that has a very comedic tone, and it's very dialogue heavy, very loud costumes. And this movie comes out in the same time period as movies like I Drink Your Blood and Last House on the Left, which were very in your face. So why the choice to be so tongue-in-cheek with the material?
You asking me?
Sure.
Oh. I don't know. I think that's just the way this script came out. I think that probably part of it is that we didn't have enough money to make it a solid zombie action movie from the beginning, like Night of the Living Dead or one of those pictures, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I think we had to really do some filler for the first, say, half of the movie. I mean, there was the thing with the gag they were playing, and they had the guy buried and all that stuff. But the action didn't really start until, I think, like an hour into the film. And for me, that's when it takes off. I mean, it's hard for me to watch because my pants and all that stuff.
You love those pants.
Yeah,
The bright yellow shirt is beautiful.
yeah, the bright yellow shirt and the pants. I have had more comments on those pants over the years. It's really incredible. Yes.
You know, I think too that you write what you know, and since we didn't have unlimited resources, I think Alan and Bob, everybody was in an acting troupe. Everybody was acting, or just finished some play, and so everybody knew this group of people, whatever their version was of these, this cast of characters. So I think it was a very natural place to go, and it was also very natural to fall into. I unfortunately had, 3 lines in the entire movie, so I had to actually be the person. So that was my challenge. But no, you write what you know.
If I may, I think there's another reason that we're missing, in that most movies hire actors, and the actors come from wherever they come, and they don't know each other until they meet on the set. But all these people, Anya, Alan, Bob, myself, Bruce, knew each other and were in theater, in other venues, and so we came to it with a sense of fun. And I think that's what sews the movie together.
Yeah, I believe that's true. It does have a lot to do with the fact that we were all very close friends. If not close friends, we were close friends with friends. It was a fun time. It was exciting, and none of us had really been that far into movie making before, so it was especially exciting, and that helped quell the mosquito situation.
Also, some of us were related. I mean, Anya and I were married at the time, and her brother was in the movie. He was Paul. And Val and I had been a couple several years before this happened. And we'd all acted.
And my first wife was in the movie.
Yep.
So, yes, it was an incestuous group, actually.
Kind of unhealthy now that I think about
Yeah.
A family affair, sort of.
it. Art?
A question based on a conversation we just had prior to this panel. Was Ted V. Michaels on the set at all? I know that you ended up scoring a movie for him right after that. He claims to have been on the set.
He was. He was on the set. And I remember one of the things he tried to do, he wanted the lights turned down. And Bob was afraid of turning the lights down. Bob and the cameraman were afraid of turning the lights down because I don't want to lose it. I remember the camera guy saying, I don't want to lose it, meaning he didn't want to film it so dark that the image failed to take. And Michaels, who was a veteran of many, I don't know if any of you know who TV Michaels, the TV for Ted Victor, but because it was TV, he wasn't embarrassed to take advantage of that. He said, no, it's too light, it's too bright, and made everybody turn the lights down. And I think we owe him, he's no longer with us, but we should thank him for that.
So was Ted just kind of supervising a little bit? Like
No, he was the first, he was the distributor, he was supervising is a rather formal word for what went on. It was more, he was suggesting.
Okay. Yeah.
Was it fun years later paying tribute to Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things in Porky's 2? I know that you wrote Porky's 2, and that scene obviously has a major Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things.
Can somebody describe that scene so they know what we're talking about?
Could you describe that scene?
I don't remember this.
I'm not sure.
Well, there's a scene in Porky's 2 where they play a prank involving a zombie.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think it did come out of that, yes.
Did you do the makeup for that zombie? Because it looks like Children Shouldn't Play with
No,
Dead
no, I wasn't, they wouldn't have allowed me to do it then, have to have a makeup guy to,
It looks just like it.
You all, or many of you, went on to participate in Dead of Night, and we definitely have Dead of Night fans. I mean, you all, or many of you have went on to lots of projects we could discuss. But did it feel different moving on to a bigger project like Dead of Night?
did it feel different?
Did it feel like did you feel pressure that you needed the next movie to be bigger in scope?
I think what happened was a Canadian company saw Children
Yes.
and asked if we had something else. And I had this idea for a script, so I wrote it very quickly in about 2 weeks or something. And we showed it to them and they liked it and they agreed to finance it. So it sort of came out of Children, but it wasn't, I don't know that we were, that's what I remember.
I remember not so much that the difference between the two movies was that Dead of Night, as it was called at that time, was much more organized. It was much more regular in this, so in that way it was more movie-like.
It had a bigger budget too.
It had a much bigger. I don't know what the budget was.
It was $250.
It's okay, which would be a nothing budget today, but it was much more organized, and it had John Marley, who was an eminent actor at the time, and
Lynn Carlin.
Carlin. I don't remember who else. Richard Backus. So, and it was, and the people, the characters, at least at the beginning of the movie, started out, a bit more normal. Because the characters and Children, even from the first frame, weren't, no offense, but weren't entirely normal. But in Dead of Night, it had the first impression was that everybody was normal.
And that was the point.
Yes.
It was
exactly.
Middle America sends their children to war, basically.
It also had to look like a sort of Ozzie and Harriet family,
Exactly.
that were going to get visited by this horrible thing.
I remember also when I was saying that it was more movie-like professionally, that Henderson Forsyth was in this, and he was the guy that people would come up to, like people in the town would come up to him and want photographs and his autograph. They didn't care much. Marley too, but more Henderson Forsyth.
Oh, because he was on TV.
And this kind of annoyed Marley.
I'd like to ask Alan about Deranged
Yes.
and how the script for that came about.
How did it come about? Let's see. I went to some convention because I would go to these conventions and promote children. And I met this guy, Tom Carr, at one of these conventions. I can't remember which one. And I guess he had seen children, and he wanted to make a movie about Ed Gein. And so he wanted us to do it. So I said, well, I put him in touch with Bob, and we met in Miami, I think. And he had the money. He'd been a concert promoter or something, right?
Yes, yes.
And I think this is the only movie he ever did. So he wanted to do this movie, and I went and did the research. And at the time, I didn't really know a whole lot about Ed Gein, and I did this research, and it was like horrifying, really, truly awful. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know how we're going to do this. And so I wanted to make it kind of a black comedy. And Tom wasn't crazy about that idea, but he went along with it anyway. And he still, to this day, doesn't like any of the comedic aspects of it. But I wrote a script, and then I worked with Jeff because we were going to co-direct it, and kind of, pared it down or whatever, tweaked it here and there, and I don't know. And I think we got a couple of notes from Tom Carr, which we incorporated. And then he put up the money, and we went to Canada and shot it there. But I'm trying to think, we did Death Dream first, right? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
I think we were working on Death Dream and working on Deranged kind of at the same time.
And you directed Great Masquerade before those two, right?
Oh, what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
But no, but you... So there was a lot all happening in a relatively quick period of time after Children's
Yeah, that's true. Yes, yes.
And I mean, to make Death Dream and Deranged in that short period of time too. I mean, these are classic films. What if any challenges did co-directing a movie pose? Did you work well together?
We worked fine together. Jeff was a great guy, and there was no ego battle or anything like that. I mean, I had certain ideas about certain scenes, and he had other ideas about other scenes, and we got along just fine. It was not a problem at all.
I just want to interject, for those of you who don't know who Ed Gein was a fellow who had a mother, and his mother had died, and he kept his mother at home after she died, and he would rob graves of young women and take their facial parts and their body parts and kind of paste them onto his mother to make his mother look better. Of course, it was the basis for the movie Psycho, and it was the basis for the movie Deranged, and I think there was one other movie might have been made out of it. But
Texas Chainsaw Massacre was based on it too.
Who?
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes. So it's kind of have an iconic view of American history.
Alan Ormsby, you went on to write many great films, including Cat People, but the teen movie My Bodyguard, which many of us, depending on what year you got HBO, watched over and over and over again. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Well, let's see. After Deranged, I I didn't want to work in movies anymore, and I went into the toy business, and I made some money there, and we were going to move to LA, and I wanted to I was going to write a script that I was thinking I would try to sell to Clint Eastwood, and it was called The Bodyguard, and it was about this bodyguard. And then I read in Variety one day that Larry Kasdan had written a script